Alrighty, so now we're going to make a seat. I finished detabbing the frame and I've tucked all the wires down there temporarily. And I've secured the tank to where it's going to sit, when I'm riding it. This is what I'm figuring for the seat. I think I'd like the hump to start about right here, and it's just going to hump right over this brace bar here. And in here is where I'm going to put the battery. So it's just going to hump just like that, and then we're going to have a little curl up right here. So that's what I think I'd like to do it. I don't really like the ones that just sort of stop and go up and then have their hump like that. I like a more gradual hump, and so that's the type that I'm going to make. I have this great big piece of styrofoam here. I'm going to have to add some more styrofoam to come down the hump right there, but just sort of lay it down there on the frame, and I'm going to take my Sharpie and draw out the lines of where the frame are, and so I can cut it. Alright, so that's a good start. This is all florist foam, by the way. And now I'm going to glue everything down. Let that harden up for a minute. Alright, so now I'm going to cut away the excess, so all this overhang is smoothed out. What do you guys think about that? I'm going to cut it out. Now I'm just sort of smoothing it out, getting all these rough edges out. I think I'm going to fill in this little area here with, something like a patch, just to make it a little bit more symmetrical on both sides. And just sort of, spend some time working it and sanding it until it looks the way you want the seat to look. It's getting there. And so now everything gets covered in this blue painter's tape. Hopefully that's how it's going to sit, right like that. This bar is in the way now, but that's how I want it to be. Alright, now everything's going to get all waxed up so it's good and slippery. Now I'm a relative beginner to working with resin, so I cut my pieces of mat into little strips, just so it's a little bit easier to work with. Once this is mixed up, you gotta act quick, because it hardens up pretty quickly. Now initially it's all a great big gloopy fibrous mess, but eventually it'll smoothen out and you just sort of let it harden. Alright, and so now it's hard and not sticky anymore. I'm going to put a couple more layers down and really stiffen it up, put some more mat down and just really get this thing as strong as possible. So it's just a little bit sticky. Hasn't quite cured yet. It's getting there. I'm just gonna peel all of this junk on out of here. The mold obviously gets destroyed. So that's how it's going to sit. I might take away just a little bit in here to close this gap here. But more or less, that's going to be the geometry of the bike. Obviously I have a lot of work left to do. Now I'm just sort of taking down some of the major hills and trimming up this edge a little bit and just sort of making it a little bit nicer before I apply the Bondo. So now I'm going to try and fill in all the bumps with body filler. Now I'm going to let that harden up a little bit. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm setting up my mounting hardware for the seat. I cut a couple of pieces of stock metal like this and drilled some holes in it, and I'm going to mount them going crossways across the frame. Just like that. And so that's the other one installed. So while I was in there, I threw together this crude little battery tray so I can clean up the electricals. And so that's how you hide away all your electricals, right underneath that hump. Zip ties are always the lazy mechanic's best friend. Alright guys, one note on safety, which really should have been obvious but definitely bears repeating, is that when you're working with this stuff and you have all this white dust flying everywhere, always, always, always have a respirator on your beer. That's just a waste of a good beer. So now that it's pretty much completely sanded, I'm going to have to go over it again with some very light Bondo to fill in some of these holes. I did get a couple of holes in the fiberglass, which are going to need to be filled in. And also to put a little bit of focus into really refining the symmetry of the seat. There are some points, especially most noticeably to me, right here where it's a little bit low compared to the arch right here. You might not be able to see it, but you can feel it when you go like this. So I got to put a little glom right here and bring it up again. So I'm going to do that. Alright, so we're looking pretty good. I have the seat pretty much looking the way that I want it to. There are a couple rough spots left in it, which I'm going to have to rebondo, but for the most part, we're looking really good. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount it. This is where I want it to be. And as you can see here, we have these strips of metal going across, and that's what I'm going to mount it to. What I have here is these rubber stoppers, and I drilled a hole in them. I've got 4 of them, 2 for each strip, and I've got just some old washers here that I'm going to use to heighten them up a little bit. But it's a good idea to use these rubber stoppers. You use thicker ones even if you can find them. This is all that they had in my hardware store. But use thicker ones because they will absorb the impact of the road, and the impact of the rattling of the engine, and so it'll be a little bit more smooth for the rider. Alright, so I made little dots where I want the holes to be. There, not there. We're going to very carefully drill them out. And now the seat's back on the bike, and it's exactly where I want it. I have it all lined up and everything, and now I'm going to drill through and into the metal. There's my 4 holes drilled. I'm assembling my hardware. Got some great big washers here to prevent any tragedies when I'm tightening everything down. And then there's my rubber stoppers on the bottom. Alright, and so now we are all mounted up. This area here is of course going to be covered by the seating pad, and so I can afford to have these, these bolts hanging out of it. But yeah, it's pretty secure. One final thing, I got a pretty good suggestion, and I shortened the stalks on the turn signals, so they're still stock, but they look a little custom, and I think it looks a lot better.